welcome to Audiovisual Cultures with me, Paula Blair. I'm delighted this time to be joined by Brenden Kumarasamy to talk about his most excellent YouTube channel, MasterTalk. Brenden and I connected using matchmaker.fm, and this is a website that connects podcasts with potential guests. Huge thanks to our members at patreon.com/avcultures for your tremendous support. Membership grants early access to new episodes, if that entices anyone to help fund the podcast on a regular basis. For other ways to support the show and to be part of the conversation, I will be back at the end with further details. And for now, I just want to say I learned loads talking to Brenden, and he's doing some really great work with speech coaching. And if you've been listening regularly to the podcast, you might know that this is something I've had my own issues and battles with over the past few years. So I was really, really delighted that he got in touch. So I'm sure you'll learn something from him too. And he seems like just a lovely person. So do enjoy. Brenden, hello. It's lovely to connect with you. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Paul. How about you?
I'm well, thanks very much. So are you based in Montreal, is that right?
That's correct.
Great.
Born and raised.
Excellent. Can I just double check the pronunciation of your name, just because I don't want to get it wrong? Is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. Feel free to just say Brenden for MasterTalk, but my last name's pronounced Kumarasamy.
Kumarasamy, lovely. So we're going to talk about your MasterTalk project. So you've got this brilliant channel on YouTube. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. So MasterTalk is a channel I started last year to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. And how that got started was when I was in university. I used to do these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So other guys my age were, playing sports or rugby or cricket or something. I wasn't built for those kinds of things. So what I did instead was I would still eat the same junk food, but I would watch other people present presentations. And I did that competitively. Mm-hmm. So in 3 years, presented over 500 times, coached dozens of people on public speaking. And then after I got a job in the corporate world, I just asked myself the following question: what can I do to make a difference in the world? What can I do to make a change? And the idea for MasterTalk came to be because I realized that a lot of the content on public speaking on YouTube isn't really good. Mm-hmm. So I started making videos in my mother's basement. One thing led to another. People started watching it for some reason. And then the channel grew and I ramped up production.
Wonderful. Excellent. Yes. Because I was wondering why would you want to get started in something like that? But the more I've worked in audio production, the more I can hear the sorts of tics that we all have and that compulsion to just fill the sonic space really quickly. So I'm really, really looking forward to hearing more about what you do.
Of course, I'm happy to.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what I do is from the YouTube channel, like that's where I guess most people interact with me. And then of course I have my own clients on the side that I started coaching a couple of years ago.
Sure. Great. And yes, because I was thinking as well, because I think you actually, in one of the videos of yours I watched, you do point this out, that of course you're making videos and you're editing them. And when I make this podcast, I edit the death out of it. So I was just, because it's something I'm really conscious of, is not taking those moments to pause, to get your sentence straight before you speak, and those tics that we have, so saying or like all the time and that sort of stuff. And I've got into the habit of just editing that out. So I'm really keen to learn more about how you actually help people overcome those habits when they're really hardwired, when they've become really developed and bedded in.
Of course, it's not easy for sure, Paula, but the idea is simple. The difference is mindset, not tactic. Mm-hmm. So for example, let's say an exceptional speaker and an average one, we're always going to forget what we want to say next. We're not geniuses. You know, there's always some point of presentation or a conversation like this one where you kind of just say, what am I supposed to say next? So naturally, whether you're great at public speaking or not, we're both going to get nervous. We're all going to get nervous. And think about it. What was I supposed to say next? But the difference lies in the third bubble, because the speaker's still trying to practice will do the following. You know, I'm nervous. I don't know what to say next, and I use the filler words to buy time so that I figure out what I say next in the sentence. But if you're really good at public speaking, that same space you fill with nothing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with absolutely nothing. And that's definitely not easy to get right the first time. It took me 4 months to master ums
Okay.
and ahs personally, practicing maybe 2-3 times a week. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the technique. I didn't have a coach. So
Mm-hmm.
now with the videos, my hope is that people can do it in a couple of weeks instead of a couple of months. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea is to always prioritize the removal of the filler words. And then over time, as they see the number go down, like exponentially, their confidence as a speaker will increase. They'll say, wow, I'm really good at this thing. And then they'll stop saying them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And I was wondering as well if you have any tips about the differences between talking for a presentation or a lecture where you have the floor, it's yours, people are there to listen to you, so they're going to wait for you. And when you're in a situation where you could be interrupted at any time, so such as a meeting or that kind of scenario, do you have any tips for how to build confidence for different situations as well?
Of course. So the way that I see this, Paula, it's more of a personal take, is you should always practice the harder thing. So if you're scared of presenting a topic that you're passionate about, that you have an expertise in, learn to present something you have no expertise in. If you're worried about meetings and getting asked questions, put yourself in a meeting and get people you hate to ask you hundreds of questions. So that way you're always prepared for the easy case scenario. I'll give you an example to demonstrate
Sure.
this live. Give me a random word.
Picture.
Sure. Okay, you let me off really easy. So what I have to do with pictures, I have to create a presentation out of thin air. So
Okay.
here I go. Lights, camera, action. Whenever we take a snap in our lives, pictures come to life. And in a picture, it is not just an image, but thousands of words, thousands of meanings, and thousands of ways of looking at the same exact picture. Pictures are snapshots of memories that we hold on for a lifetime. When we get older and we see our children playing in the grass at 5 years old, or that 8-year-old birthday where their sister runs a piece of cake into their face, pictures allow us to capture moments that matter. And that's exactly why in this presentation, I'm going to be teaching you the history of pictures and how you can take a snap of every important moment of your life. So notice how I just did that like randomly.
Mm.
This is what I call the random word exercise. Obviously, the first thing I want to point out, don't compare yourself to me. I literally do this thousands of times, right? Like, it's obviously the first time I got picture, I was like, I don't know. And then over time, you get better. All I'm asking for, 5 minutes of your time with 5 words. Spend 60 seconds and just do a lamppost, a table, teapot, door, 1 minute each, 5 minutes a day. And if you do that for a year, you'll have done the exercise
Mm.
1,800 times. And here's the beauty of this whole thing is that if you can do hippo randomly and you're passionate about writing and that's your presentation, well, if you're able to present hippo, what's a presentation on writing? You've been writing for years. It's going to be easy. It's that mindset shift.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really excellent exercise. That's something to try, I think. um, let's see. So you do quite a lot of those types of examples in your YouTube channel as well. And um, I mean, like what is maybe you've said this before, but I sort of want to see if we can drill down on this a little bit. Like, what is it that has really made you want to try and help people with their public speaking? You know, is it something that you've noticed, and was it bothering you hearing people not being able to do that on the fly, or stumbling over their words? You know, what really was it that made you really want to get into this kind of career pathway?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really stems from a value system, Paula. Like for me, life and happiness stems from just doing great things, doing
Mm-hmm.
important things, doing things that matter. And what I realized was, like the world tells us to find a passion and to figure out what you're passionate about. I honestly think that's a bad question. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is because it's general, it's vague. What does a passion even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we try and spend our whole lives trying to chase something that's so vague in nature that you can have unlimited amounts of. And that's why most people don't follow their passions, because they don't know what it is. Here's a better question. What does the world need you most to do right now, and why? By answering that question, you'll make a decision, which is more important than any passion you can ever have. When I was 12, I made the decision to not be poor. So I went to business school and I wanted to get a job to get out of the poverty line and provide my mother with an opportunity she never had. Then after that, it was to get a job in technology consulting, which is something I always wanted. And then it led to YouTube. Before those decisions, I never wanted to be a YouTuber. Jeez, of all
Mm-hmm.
things, it's so scary being on camera, like looking at all these weird influencers. But the punchline is, if I never made the decision to be an accountant, I never made the decision to be a technology consultant, I wouldn't have the expertise today to even teach people MasterTalk. So I think the point of the conversation is figuring out what you're willing to stand for. For
Mm-hmm.
me, I realized that there's a lot of introverted clients that I had back in the day, that I still have to this day, that had amazing ideas,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but didn't want to share it because they thought public speaking was only for extroverts. That's a good category. Or people who are startup founders, really smart individuals, were literally going to change the course of pretty much every human's being on earth, and they were too afraid to share an idea in a presentation. I was like, seriously? You spend like code like years like building this product. You can't spend like 10 minutes presenting it. So I just got really passionate because I realized a lot of people who had great ideas did not have access to free communication tools because they couldn't afford rates of mine or any other speech coach. So I wanted to democratize the content
Mm-hmm.
and public speaking in a way that someone like Dale Carnegie couldn't, because he was born in an area or in an era of time where this type of conversation wouldn't even be possible, where we
Mm-hmm.
can't really hear him or see him in a video. And so the ultimate goal of MasterTalk, essentially, Paula, is after I die, people can still use my content forever.
Yeah, oh, that's really wonderful, Brenden. I feel like this is the sort of content I would have benefited from many years ago, because I had a go at being an academic and being a lecturer, and I'm a very shy girl in the corner, introverted person, and it took me such a long time to be able to stand in front of an auditorium full of people and really be not just confident in the knowledge that I had, but in communicating it and saying it in a way that was not just communicable, but interesting and engaging, because that's the whole other step, isn't it? It's you can have that ability to actually stand up and orate, but are you then, the challenge is making it actually really interesting to the people who are receiving it. So, I mean, is that something you progress into as well with your clients?
Absolutely. Or with really anybody who watches the
Mm-hmm.
videos, frankly. Like, just to give you an idea, especially since you mentioned being an introvert. Like, a lot of people come up to me and they go, like, well, what presentation tips do you have for introverts? Like, or do we make good speakers? Like, of course you do. I made a whole
Mm-hmm.
video just about that. And there's three things that introverts do better than any other speaker. One is that they're much better at listening. So notice in this very conversation you're having, you're a very, very good listener, right? Because you might spend more of your time not in conversation, versus someone like me who likes to yap a lot, hence why I come on podcasts. So it's much harder for me, or it was at the beginning of my public speaking journey, to tailor my message in a way that someone like you would want to hear it. Because when I started speaking, I was really loud and aggressive. So someone like you would be like, whoa, like this guy is like crazy, right? So that's one. Two is your ability to pause and silence effectively. So that's one of the key foundational skills of public speaking, knowing how to pause whenever you want to present something, whenever you want to say something. That's super easy for an introvert to do well because they spend most or higher percentage of time in silence. But someone like me, silences and pauses is extremely difficult because we get very uncomfortable. You almost want to bite your nails when there's nothing being said. Whereas someone who reads a book all day, I mean, I'm obviously generalizing, stereotype, but you get the idea, right? They just go, well, it's easy. And the third thing is that they're much better at holding space for their audience. So since introverts like to keep to themselves a lot more, they're more respectful of other people's spaces. So when they speak in a crowd, they don't try and be obnoxious. They speak in a way that appeals to more people. So even if everyone isn't going to get super, super excited by them, they're going to really like the speaker. You never see like an introverted speaker being hated on. I've never really seen that. Versus a Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Who is very, very loud. So you either really, really like him, like I do, or you really, really don't. Okay. So you pull into extremes. So what's the takeaway? The takeaway here is it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. What matters is your willingness to dive into what you're good at and, more importantly, learn from the other. So if you're more extroverted, are you willing to learn from the introverts, which I had to do? And if you're introverted, are you willing to learn from the extrovert? So going back to engagement, what you said, Paula, the easiest way to engage people is to present the same presentation 100 times. The reason why we aren't engaging as speakers is not because we're not engaging people. It's because we keep changing up our presentations. Okay. If we're presenting 100 different presentations, we only ask ourselves one question. That one question is, what content should I put in this thing? And then you're just panicking about that. But if you do the same thing over again, like the 300 times I've presented a single presentation, you don't ask yourself that question anymore because you know the content. You're asking yourself how to engage your audience. What emotions am I conveying? And what do they actually care about?
That's really excellent. Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there as well. And I think just to tease that out a little bit more, I was wondering if you had noticed any differences between not just personality types, but possibly along gender lines. And you mentioned your self-class backgrounds as well, because I think just my own experience as somebody who's grown up from a working class background, but also as a woman, it can be really difficult to command and hold the space. And you're more likely to be talked over in a situation where they're, say, a meeting again, for example, or a seminar kind of scenario as well. You might be, if you pause at all, I wonder if that's why, say, young women, even much younger than me, if that's why there's such a habit of speaking, oh, and it was like this and then that and then sort of like this and then kind of a bit like that, so you're not really saying anything, but you're filling the sonic space up because I wonder if that's a way of holding on to it. So I was wondering if you come across any of those kinds of issues in your work and how you might try and advise on those.
No, absolutely. So I definitely agree that there's definitely gender and cultural differences sometimes, especially in the context of maybe a European setting or an Asian one in particular, like the continent of Asia, I mean.
Yeah.
But I would say in general, my POV on this, so my point of view, is that at the end of the day, we're all going to have cultural and gender barriers. But if you're a great speaker, no one cares about those barriers. So I'll give you an example. Think about Susan Cain or Brene Brown. They're excellent speakers. They're also extreme introverts. But we never look at them and say, hey, because they're a woman, they gotta have some sort of different cultural barriers. So I think the way that we want to think about this, to keep it unified and keep it easy to understand, is confidence does not stem from a glass of water or some sort of power pose or some sort of Wonder Woman thing before you present, because it's fixing the symptom, not the core issue. The core issue for anybody, not just women, like literally anybody, is the belief system in whatever it is that you believe in. So in my case, I started coaching C-level executives when I was 23 years old. So you can imagine the level of insecurity I had as a guy, or as a kid rather, coaching these executives who trusted me with their transformation. So obviously I knew how to coach them. That wasn't the issue. In the same way, I'm sure like people, you know, like you, younger women, are smart people. That's not the issue. It's that internal belief system, that compass that guides the way that we speak, that isn't directed in the right way. So my opinion is the way you fix this has nothing to do with public speaking, but rather to do with what you believe in. So for me, one side of the coin, which is the side we don't want to look at, but the side we needed to see, is Brenden's too young, Brenden's unqualified, Brenden shouldn't be making videos on YouTube. And that's the voice in that side of the coin that everyone listens to. But the other side's a lot more interesting. And that stems from the following question: what happens if I do nothing? And to ponder that. And if I do nothing, this is what happens. Every 16-year-old girl and boy in the world who can't afford me, that literally everybody, the people who want to master public speaking within that demographic, when they type public speaking tips, what do they find? They find a bunch of old dudes who don't know anything about public speaking. So my option A or B isn't to embarrass myself. Option A is do the thing, right? Make the videos, even if it's in your mother's basement, even if it's grainy. Or option B is hurt millions of people for the rest of time. Because I'm the only speech coach in my early 20s who has that experience. So I'm the only person who can be a role model for a 16-year-old girl or boy, right? And that's the punchline. So the question essentially is, who suffers from your inability to take action? I'm sure when you started this podcast, Paula, you said, oh, you know, I'm an introvert, you know, I see all these radio hosts, I can't be loud like them.
Yeah.
But why did you do it anyways? You did it because your community needed the information, and that's all that matters. So if you have that belief system, and it's hard to find, it's not easy work, but it's doable, because once you get there, then it doesn't matter about gender differences. Then you're just going to speak really well, and no one's going to care about any of those things. They're just going to look at you and say, Paula, you're such an incredible speaker, and that's all that matters.
Gosh, yeah, that's really inspiring. I'm sure a lot of people out there are benefiting already from that really positive attitude. That's amazing.
I love the fist bumps.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I mean, I suppose any other questions I had were probably about speaking at those cultural levels. I don't know how broad or deep you go into specific things, or how deep your studies are into, well, what are actually the barriers, because you seem to have really good fixes for, as like you say, you defined between the symptoms and the core problems. So is it that you try and target those symptoms that people seem to demonstrate then, rather than psychologizing the whole of a person so that they can understand, but it's actually just, this is how we get you to just do it, you know?
No, absolutely. And I'm sure other speech coaches have their own opinions on things. But I think the way I would say it is, for me, cultural differences is more of seasoning on the cake. So in the sense of, once we fix that core issue, then we can start adjusting our presentation based on the cultural context of the person we're presenting to. So there's two parts to that I would like to talk about. So the first part is the cultural context. So let's say when I'm in the UK and I give a presentation, I wouldn't, like, I say soccer a lot in the US when I present keynotes. Obviously I wouldn't say that because nobody knows what soccer is. I would have to say footy or football, and you change the terminology. And the way you want to do this really efficiently is you want to have a conversation with someone who understands both the culture you want to speak to and the culture you're in. So let's say I want to speak to the UK and I knew nothing about UK culture. I would talk to someone who immigrated from the UK to Canada who lives in Canada. So that way when I ask them questions, they're sensitive to both Canadian and UK culture, so they can clearly outline the difference for me. Right? I'm lucky I got a bit of friends in every little part of the globe, so I could just ask those people and just go, what do you think? Like same thing with Japanese, or the opposite, right? And then from that seasoning, you can achieve it. Second thing that I think is a bit more interesting for people is what I call mirroring. Or well, it's not something that's invented by me. A lot of therapists do this as well. But mirroring is essentially mirroring the energy of the person you're speaking to, so they find you a lot more relatable. So let's say you walked into this conversation, Paula, and you said something like this: Brenden, it's so great to see you. This is awesome. I would have mirrored the exact same. I would have said, Paula, it's such an amazing time to be here. It's so great to be here. But when I turned on the Zoom and you talked to me and you started with, hey, Brenden, how's it going? My goal as a speaker, and our job, is to mirror the person across the call, across the presentation room, to make them feel as comfortable as possible. So when I talk to the extrovert, and the extrovert goes, oh, Brenden, I'm really excited to be coached by you. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be like, well, me too, George. It's going to be great. But then the other side of the spectrum, let's say, I don't know, Tom or Jessica walks in and goes, Brenden, I'm not really sure about this public speaking thing. I've been scared for many years. Well, the way I talk to them is very different. I would say something like, well, I just want to acknowledge you for having the courage to just come to this workshop today. How about we try a couple of exercises, see what happens, and we go with it. And that is the key to communication. Mirror the energy of the other person, and then the conversations, whether it's a one-on-one or whether it's a public speaking context, becomes a lot more meaningful and becomes a lot more deeper.
More really excellent advice there. Thank you, Brenden.
Of course.
Okay. So I suppose just a quick question about your YouTube channel, because I'm quite interested in the meta-ness, if that's a word, probably not, of these kinds of, I suppose, outputs. So even the likes of what I do with the podcast, it's a podcast that explores different areas of culture, but it is of itself a cultural product. And I was wondering if you think of your YouTube channel like that as well. So the videos that you produce, they are aesthetic objects in themselves, and you put a lot of care into how you frame yourself within them and how you structure them. And I was wondering about more the production side of things for you. So you've started in a very amateur way, and I love the word amateur, because we have to remember the root of that word, because I think we've come to think of it as unqualified, or this person doesn't know what they're doing. But really the root of it is, it comes from love. You love doing it. It comes from that root of amo or amour. And so just starting it anyway, DIY, from the house kind of thing. And actually we've all ended up doing everything that way in the pandemic. So that to the more polished products that you're doing now, would you like to say anything about just how you actually produce it, put it together and structure it and all those sorts of things as well?
Of course, happy to share. So the underlining theme of this whole, I would say, production spiel is that progression always leads to obsession if you really like what you're doing. So when I started, I wasn't really obsessed with anything. I just wanted to be a corporate executive at a company. I didn't really want too much else in my life. Make a lot of money, donate a lot of money, have a great family, and then die. Nothing else planned, to be honest. It was much like anyone else. I was a pretty normal person. But I was just really frustrated with the content. So I just said, this is pretty bad. I can do better in my basement with a phone. So I just took a phone out. My mom was kind of wondering, what are you doing? You work at like IBM. Why are you making videos in your basement? I was like, Mom, let me just do my thing. So anyways, over time, it went from no production, no money, nothing. And then, the production got slowly better and better and better. And by production, I mean me presenting on camera got better, because I was terrible. And if you don't believe me, look at the first couple of videos. They're still up for a reason, so that you can see the journey. But the idea was, over time, it slowly turned into an obsession, because I saw the bigger picture for what MasterTalk could be and was supposed to become. Because I realized nobody else was trying to help the world master public speaking. Because most speaking coaches in the industry, if I'm being very upfront here, they make a lot of money. So they have no incentive to share their content for free. If you're a speech coach with 12 CEO clients, you're done. Like you're done. They pay you $10,000 each, and then they recommend you to another. And then at some point you're charging $30,000 for a package or something. And then you're done. Like you don't have to do anything else. So you're never going to create free content. And that frustrated me because I said, if you're going to make that much money, you should at least give back to society. And I'm not here to tell you I charge nothing for my services, but I'm saying at the minimum, I should be giving back to the community, right? That's stemming from a belief system. So then what happened over time, mostly because of frustration, I just didn't like the other videos that were uploaded. I would say 8-9 months into it, when I was still making videos in my basement, I just looked at, I went to a lot of personal development conferences, think Tony Robbins-esque events, and I just said I should do something bigger with this thing. And I was just lucky that one of my best friends was in the video business since he was 16. So I just said, do you want to make my videos? Do you want to do my production? And then he said yes. I gave him 25% of my salary. We never looked back. And the rest was history. But I think the idea is that once it turns into an obsession, then you do obsessive things. So like, for example, I actually write my content 5 years in advance. Right. The reason I do that is because I'm so obsessed to winning and sharing this content that this has become my obsession. So every day I write a YouTube script. I have content as of this recording until May of 2022. My goodness. And I film everything. I love how you say it. I love how you said, my goodness. I just love it. It made me laugh. It's good. But the idea is just, and I record a year in advance. So like right now, when I cut my hair in 2 weeks, I'm going to be filming all of my videos for 2021 in 2 days. Right. So to make sure I'm always ahead, of schedule. But that you don't start there. You definitely don't start there. Where you start with is this stupid phone doesn't work. How do you do this? And then over time, if it's something you really want to do, then you take it a lot more seriously.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really inspiring. I suppose it's not dissimilar story with this very podcast as well. It's I'm just going to say, if I'm able to do this, now I'm making a podcast and I have a schedule to keep. So yeah, that's I think that's really inspiring for anybody who might want to try something of their own. But yes, so gosh, you're so well ahead of the game then. And yeah, because another question I had was, how do you keep going? Do you never run out of material? So clearly you don't run out of material. There's always more issues that arise and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I definitely think it's a challenge for sure in public speaking, especially when I started, because, it's silences, ums and ahs. What else do I talk about on this thing? But over time, there's a couple of things I realized. So one is that actually all speech coaches on YouTube don't even post consistently every week. So as long as I just do once a week, I'm already ahead of competition. So I'll never do more than once a week, because doing more than once a week on YouTube is it's so hard, really difficult. The second part of the equation so there's 3 parts. And the second part is obviously asking your audience a lot. So what I do a lot on these shows is, let's say after a conversation I have with, let's say someone like you, like the first introvert I talked to, they would say, I'm not a really good speaker. And I was like, well, why do you think that? And they're like, oh, well, I'm not an expert. I was like, I got to make a video on the 3 lessons I learned from introverts that apply to any presentation. So what I do is I have like a Google Keep. Google Keep, for those who don't know, it's like a notepad, like a note app. You can use any note app, like a iNotes or whatever. And then you write a bunch of titles. And I'm not allowed, I have one rule. I'm not allowed to go to bed unless I write one.
Okay.
So if it's 1 a.m. and I'm done all my meetings and I still haven't written it, I have to sit down and write it. And if I lose an hour of sleep, it's my fault for not being more efficient with my time. And the third thing is being open-minded, keeping an open mind to just writing whatever you think is best. So in the same way you know a lot more about audio production than most people on earth, I'm the same way with public speaking coaching. So because of that unique lens that I have with the content, I can create stuff as long as I open my mind to those opportunities. So I've written, in addition to like standard stuff, like how to be an that stuff. But I also talk about the 3 lessons I learned from dance that apply to any presentation, karaoke. I'm releasing one on rapper or stand-up comedians, like magicians. I'm just using that creativity. But because I'm so ahead of the game, like I'm like for 20 months ahead of schedule now, almost 2 years basically, I have a lot less stress right? So I'm not stressed to find the next big thing or to get my content ready in 2 hours or something. I can take it easy and just say, okay, what did I learn? Like yesterday, I wrote a presentation on the 3 lessons I learned from mirrors, like the mirror you look at in the morning. How does that apply to presentations? So I just keep it going. And luckily for me, I don't know, it's been working out.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, that's discipline right there. That's excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, is there anything else you want to cover? Is there anything you feel that you would like to say during this opportunity that you haven't done yet?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to kind of close this conversation off with my
Yeah.
favorite book and my favorite life recommendation. So the first one is a book that I highly recommend people read. It's called Thirst by Scott Harrison. I think it's the best book on communication and public speaking that not many people know about. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason is because he's not really a public speaking coach. He's a CEO of a nonprofit. But the reason why this book is so important is because he raised over $300 million for his charity water, right? Through storytelling, branding, and marketing. But as an
Mm-hmm.
NPO, you don't have a lot of resources. So there's a lot of lessons you can learn from that book that you can apply to your day-to-day speaking because he actually applies the advice. And I use it for all my workshops, all my podcasts, everything. So I highly recommend the read. And the life recommendation is my favorite quote, which is as follows: be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally okay. But if you're listening to this podcast, you've made it this far in the conversation, you probably want to do something a bit different with your life. And my advice is the only way to do that is to be a bit more crazy. Don't you find it all odd that as a 22-year-old, I started a YouTube channel on public speaking tips of all things? Then I started coaching C-level executives, that's like CEOs, at like 23. But I'm also having this very conversation with you on a mattress. I still live in my mother's basement. I don't own a car, and I don't plan on moving out of my mother's house for another 5, 6 years. And that's the point. None of those decisions make any sense to anyone except the only person that matters, which you haven't guessed so far, is you. And once you start making decisions that only make sense to you, whether it's starting a YouTube channel on some random topic like public speaking and doing all these weird stuff, well then, by my definition, you've become insane. And when you get to that level, you'll be able to start making decisions that are probably right.
That's wonderful. You must have enough material for your own book by this point, no doubt.
Yeah, probably. I won't be releasing one for a very
You
long
don't
time,
think
though.
so? No, I don't know if you've got a good couple of years worth of material. Something to think about, Brenden.
Absolutely.
Great. Is there, apart from your YouTube channel, this is called MasterTalk, is there anywhere else you would like to point people to find you online?
Yeah, for sure. So for those who want to check out the YouTube channel, like you mentioned, Paula, it's Master Talk in one word. And for Instagram, you can also message me there if you want to get in touch with me. So that's at Master Your Talks. If you have any questions, concerns, complaints, insults, I'm happy with anything. Don't be shy to send me a message.
Thank you so much. You've been so generous with all of your ideas and your time, and I really highly recommend anyone really, whether you're a public speaker or even just anyone, if you want to work on and improve your everyday speech, I think your channel is a really excellent go-to for some really useful tips and food for thought as well, I think, about life in general.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Brenden. Yeah, do keep in touch. It'd be brilliant to hear from you again.
Of course, likewise, don't be shy to send me an email.
This has been a Cozy Peapod production with me, Paula Blair, and my very special guest, Brenden Kumarasamy from MasterTalk. The music is Common Ground by Airtone, used under a Creative Commons 3.0 non-commercial license. The episode was recorded using Zoom and edited by Paula Blair. If you want to support my work without committing to a regular Patreon membership, you can slip me a $5 at buymeacoffee.com/PEA Blair. Any money received goes back into improving the podcast. Be part of the conversation with AV Cultures on Facebook and Twitter, and AV Cultures Pod on Instagram. We're always happy to hear from potential guests and to have ideas for other shows from our listeners, so do please get in touch. Massive thanks for joining us. Be excellent to each other and catch you next time.